Ohio State opens up Big Ten play on the road this year against Michigan State on Saturday on Peacock, 7:30. I'm Stephen, that's Stefan, and that's Andrew, and it's time for some outrageous, I don't know what outrageous is, outrageous predictions. Stefan, let's get crazy.
Will Howard, 30-plus yard rushing touchdown. I think he's talked about it a little bit this week about wanting to use his legs a bit more, wanting to kind of show off some of that mobility, and I think through 3 games, we just haven't really had to see it much, right? Like, I think a lot has been clicking for this offense without Will having to be too mobile. We've seen him move out of the pocket and things like that, but not necessarily run the ball as much as we have at Kansas State and kind of throughout his career. I think we're going to see it this week against Michigan State. I think they're a little bit of a tougher defense than what Ohio State's seen to this point. So I think we're going to see him put his legs to use, maybe an RPO, kind of something like that, and go 30-plus yards for a touchdown.
And the thing is, we've seen him get out there and use his legs a little bit during practice in fall camp. He had like an 80-yard run for a touchdown in practice. But to your point, we haven't necessarily seen it in major fashion in the game, even though he does have 2 rushing touchdowns this year. I'm going to go next year. Trayon Henderson and Quin Judkins have been the best running back duo in the country. And they're averaging about 20 carries a game for about 101 yards and 2 touchdowns per game. I am going to essentially double that a little bit, 300 yards. Combined against Michigan State. Michigan State's not good against the run. They're not good against the pass either, but clearly this team is explosive in the run game. And Quin Judkins has had a chance to have a 14-plus carry game. Trayon Henderson has not necessarily had a chance to do that because they've been blowing some teams out. Maybe this game's a little bit closer later on in the game, but also this team has established its run game, and both of those guys can be explosive. Combination of 300 yards on the ground, Trayon Henderson, Quin Judkins. Get crazy. Andrew.
Ohio State's defense allows 2.9 or fewer yards per carry to Michigan State's running backs, and they end up with 5 sacks. I think last week's game against Marshall, whether you want to call it a wake-up call, whether you want to call it a moment where it was just they were just waiting for Big Ten play, whatever you want to say, however you want to phrase that, I think this is it. I think Ohio State's defensive line is going to really show up against Michigan State. It sounds like this was a really tough physical week of practice. Stefan and I have made the joke, and we made the joke on the pod about this is probably a bad week to be an Ohio State defensive lineman at practice this week. This is probably a very, very tough couple of days for you. I think that's going to show up. Whether Tyleik Williams is there or not, obviously you'd rather have Tyleik Williams. I think Ohio State's defensive line is really going to show up. So I think Michigan State's running backs are going to be in for a really tough night. So under 3 yards a carry from them, Ohio State's defensive line is going to end up with 5 sacks. I think we're going to see a very, very aggressive, concerted effort from those guys.
And that plays into the fact that Ohio State's been very, very good against the run all year. But then also, Marshall didn't necessarily play an offense that catered to being able to get sacks, how quickly they were getting the ball out. Michigan State does a little bit, so it's a chance for Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau out. Maybe Tyleik Williams is back in the mix for those guys to get pressure on the quarterback and maybe take him down a little bit. So we got 5 sacks, less than 3 yards per carry running, 30-yard touchdown run for Will Howard, and 300 rushing yards for Quin Judkins and Trayon Henderson against Michigan State. Get the text 614-350-3315 and go listen to Buckeye Talk wherever you find podcasts. We'll continue to have this conversation. I'm Steven, that's Stefan, that's Andrew. See you at the game on Saturday, maybe.